OPEC producers are fighting for market share as oil prices continue to sink to 5-year lows. Oil is below 62 now. U.S. producers still grappling with a decades-old export ban. Congressman Joe Barton has authorized a bill looking to end that ban and bring U.S. crude to international markets. Congressman Barton, good to have you on the program. Welcome.
Glad to be with you.
Tell us about this ban that has been in place for so long and what lifting it would result in.
Well, it was put in place back in the 1970s after the Arab oil embargo against the United States and Western Europe. It was felt at that time that oil was a strategic commodity and was too important to allow it to be exported in the form of crude oil. Today, the market's totally different. We have a surplus of crude oil on the world market. That's why prices are in the $60 a barrel range instead of the $100 a barrel range. I think generally it's better to be free market than some sort of a closed or controlled market. I think it would benefit, obviously, the American oil producer to be able to export crude on the world market, but it would also benefit the American consumer because ultimately prices are set at the world market. And if U.S. crude production is going sometimes into the world market, over time that's going to keep prices lower here in the United States.
So talk to us about crude versus shale. I mean, you've got the shale revolution going on, and that's partly the reason that there is enough energy in the world, because people understand that America will ultimately be an exporter. So can you explain crude relative to shale?
Sure. Well, shale is a type from which you can extract crude oil. Here in the United States, most of the increase in domestic production is coming from shale oil that is produced by hydraulically fracturing and horizontally drilling the shale rock formation. We've probably increased production over 2 million barrels a day over the last 3 years, and that approximately is what the surplus on the world market is. So shale oil is a form of crude oil that comes from a specific rock formation.
Understood. All right. So why hasn't this ban been lifted? I mean, I recognize that this has been deemed, one product that is important to the U.S., but given the situation in the world today, what's holding us back? What's the downside risk?
Well, until the last year or so, it was more of an academic issue because we were still importing a majority of our oil. It's only in the last year or two that we've increased domestic production enough that we could have a debate about lifting the crude oil ban. The United States is now producing well over 9 million barrels a day. I've heard as high as 11 million, but I don't think that's correct. But in any event, we now have a surplus of crude oil in the United States. We don't have the refinery capacity to refine it all. So let's keep those rigs drilling by allowing our producers to put it into the world market.
Congressman, let me switch gears and ask you about the massive $1.1 trillion spending bill passed last night. What's the main takeaway for you, and what's the next battle on the Hill?
Well, it wasn't passed last night. It was released for review. It's a 1,600-page document. I briefly went to the Republican conference before I came to do your TV interview. From what little I know about it so far, I would be a no vote simply because the Constitution, to me, is something you don't compromise on. And this would fund, if only briefly, the president's unconstitutional action on illegal immigration. So that being the case, I'm a no vote. But it is a 1,600-page document. I will get myself and my staff to review it. But if I had to vote right now, based on what I know, I would vote no.
Right. So what's most important to you is ensuring that that massive immigration executive order is either stopped or hampered in some way. Then.
Well, the first 3 words of the Constitution are "we the people." So when you're playing with the Constitution, you're really playing with or against the people. The president clearly doesn't have the authority to do what he did. It's very clear in Article 1, Section 1, and Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution that the Congress passes laws, and the Congress specifically has authority on naturalization.
Right.
So it's unconstitutional. I'm a no. I'm going to defend the Constitution.
I totally understand, Congressman, but real quick, are you willing to defend the Constitution up to having supporting another government shutdown? I mean, John McCain said to us this weekend, no government shutdown. We need to make sure the American people understand the GOP knows how to govern. Are you willing to allow this government to shut down again?
Well, if I have, I'm not an advocate of shutting the government down. There are all kinds of ways you could do this legislatively so there wouldn't be a government shutdown. But ultimately, if you're against the Constitution, you're against the people, and the people theoretically are the government. So, I'm going to be a no probably on this bill. And then, if the president decided to, if it passes and the president vetoes it, we can come back and we can segregate Homeland Security. There's all kinds of things you can do legislatively so that the government does not shut down.
All right, so you're going to protect that and ensure that the government doesn't shut down, but try to get around it in another way. Congressman, we'll be watching when, in fact, if, in fact, that bill does pass. Thanks very much for joining us.
You're always welcome.
Congressman Joe Barton joining us in D.C.